Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the 42th virtual Guinness Six Nations preview brought to you in association with Guinness, the tournament sponsors. Hope everyone on the call and everyone belonging to you as well is keeping well. It's a little bit weird, isn't it? Usually, I suppose we'd be in Liberty Hall Theatre or somewhere like that, but we're glad that you could get over Zoom fatigue to join us for this evening's show, and in time as well, I suppose, for weeks of Zoom cans. But we're going to start Lockdown 2.0 as we need to continue by enjoying and chatting about rugby, which I think automatically makes this lockdown a little bit more tolerable, more palatable than March through June. I'm sure you'll agree. We've got three very special guests lined up for you this evening, beginning with Ian Keatley. You can see him on the screen there. We'll be chatting to him momentarily. And we've also got a competition for best questions, so fire away in the chat. We've got some of them preloaded from you guys already, but work away throughout the show. The prize will be chosen by one of our guests later on, and it is a Guinness Bujo at home burger kit worth €55 and a jersey of your choosing as well from the Lovell Rugby website. Bit of retail therapy.
Not
I
bad.
think will go a long way over the next few weeks. Firstly, a brief introduction from ourselves. My name is Gavan Casey, and the man to my right and your right? No, yeah, right, is the 42's Murray Kinsella, or to give him his full title, Murray Kinsella. Murray, tell me this. What has life been like over the last few months for Ireland's leading rugby reporter? Have you been chatting to Rory O'Connor much? Or
You burned me straight away. Thank you for that. Yeah, life's been good. It's been very different for all of us reporters. Obviously, with no one in the stand beside you in terms of fans, it's different being there. It is a privilege to be there, definitely. And obviously, having sport to watch is brilliant, but getting to go and watch is that bit better. It is different in the stadium as well. I mean, you can hear so much of what the players are saying, and people like Bundy Aki appreciate them on a whole new level, just what their communication is like. But yeah, it's been good, and welcome to have it all back.
you did mention Aki earlier before we came on air about what you can hear from him on the pitch, and you were a little bit surprised even. I think we know he's kind of a vocal player and he's grown into becoming a leader in this Ireland team, but what sort of things is he saying on the pitch that you've heard?
It's funny. Some of the stuff is hilarious. I mean, he's challenging opposition players to come at him. You can hear all that, as well as just the encouragement of teammates. He's constantly screaming every time there's a tackle made, just energizing everyone around him. And I just love the little bits where you can hear players getting kind of head to head. He had a go at a couple of the Glasgow players in the first game down in Connacht. So yeah, it's been brilliant to hear that kind of stuff, the communication, how players are communicating off the ball, that little bit of detail. But listen, you'd love to have people there, and hopefully we get there sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. We'll be hearing from Niamh, Briggs and Andrew Trimble a little bit later on. But firstly, Ian Keatley joins us. Buona serata. Ian, how are you getting on? How's life?
That's not what they say over here. But anyway.
Google Translate 5 minutes before the show, and I knew it would let me down as well.
Buonasera.
Buonasera. That's a simple one, right?
Yeah, close enough. But I'm really good, guys. How are you?
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, very well. How's life been treating you over there, like since the move? How the last, well, I suppose the last 8 months have been challenging everywhere, but on the rugby front, just how have you found it so far, and how have you settled into what is a different culture than that to which you've been accustomed throughout your career?
Yeah, I've absolutely loved just even just getting out of the Irish environment and just trying something new. But obviously I knew it'd be a bit challenging moving over here with the language barrier and just not having that that safety net of your family nearby. But obviously my family came over with me, and we've just loved the experience. Just like last summer we had a great summer. Just on days off you could just go to the beach, and it's like you're on a little mini holiday. Like, you know, way sometimes in Ireland when it's raining you're like, oh, I wish I could just go to the beach for a day, and we could, which is brilliant. But also training in 32 degree heat was it took me a while to get used to.
Does it help the fact that you've actually been a bit of a road warrior throughout your career anyway, and that you're from, like, you've left your native province young and played elsewhere for foreign provinces, if you like, and also London Irish? Like, you've probably had to acclimatise and move home a fair few times throughout your career. So, like, does that ease the culture shock, if you want to put it that way, of moving to Italy to play rugby?
Well, from moving from Leinster to Connacht to Munster, they're all very similar enough. I said 2 hours, and I was always home from if I wanted to get home, if I just wanted that family support. So it was a little bit different moving over here from that. But I was so happy that I did go to London Irish just after my stint with my time with Munster, just because I know it was only for a short time, 3 months, but it just kind of gave me, you sometimes get caught up in like, you get caught up in a bubble, and you just realize there is like life after rugby in Munster. And I was just so happy to go there. And I did know there was a few Irish guys there, like Conor Gilson, Brendan Mackin, and obviously the Declan Kidney was there as well, which was a great help. And I knew Les Kiss from the Irish setup, so that did help. But just to realize that when I got out of Munster, I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? Will I like it? Just get out there. And then that just gave me so much confidence when I was going over to Italy then.
Yeah, spot on. How different is the Italian dressing room or being part of that, your Italian language and all that? Obviously you get used to Munster and the, I guess, relentless slagging. Is it much different over there?
No, they're all really good guys. Like quite similar. Like I think it's just the rugby banter, or quite similar to school banter. There is that slagging. There is obviously a difference here because you have the Italian dressing room and then the foreigner dressing room. So there is a little bit of a divide, but that's kind of natural. You're gonna go to the people that you can communicate with better. But I've been saying that there is no divide in we all still get on really well, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to ask about the rugby. We actually just got a question in though. Justin Cronin wants to know who was the biggest joker in Munster during your time there.
I think probably everyone knows that. Well, there's different types of jokers. Like you had David Kilcoyne, who's unbelievably witty and he just come out with hilarious comments and cracks. But then you have the likes of Zebo, who just brings enjoyment to just every training session, every time you're in the gym or in the dressing room. You just crack a smile when you're with them. So I think you need all those different types of personalities, and they actually go a long way to make creating a constructive environment.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of what Benetton are doing on the pitch, we've actually got a good few questions on that front as well, about how they've developed, I suppose, into quite a force in the Pro 14. Fergal O'Shea was on asking how that's going to transmit maybe into the Italian team in the future. And we had another one from Niall O'Sullivan asking, when is that level going to translate into senior international rugby? What's your sense of that, of Italian rugby and where it's going and where it's come from?
So a lot of people kind of ask me about that, because obviously Benetton's been doing so well, and a lot of it's got down to do with Kieran Crowley, the head coach, because it is quite different to the Irish system. Obviously, the Irish system is, I think it's second to none. You're almost coming out of even coming from schools. You've got nearly fully blooded academy players coming out of the schools, and then they go into the academy and they're just learning from players and coaches, and they're brought straight into the senior team and they're learning quite quickly. And that's probably the only difference here with the Italy setup, is they don't have that system. So I think if they were to progress even further, they need to start producing an undergrade system. I actually don't think they have a system. We don't in Benetton, we don't have an academy, which is strange. It all comes from they're called permit players, which are quite similar to club players, and they bring the club players in, but it's very loose. There's no real structure behind it. But and to go on to the Italy team, I think they do struggle because they don't have as much time together. When I was in Ireland, the Irish team would meet up for little camps, 2 or 3 day camps over Christmas, 2 or 3 day camps, or a week together, just mid-season, and they learn. While here in Italy, they only really get to meet up a week before the match, and they're trying to get everything in. And also in the Irish setup, you have quite all the provinces kind of play similarly enough, because they're all under that Irish control. Andy Farrell would be okay, we're working on this and this at the moment, try and bring it into your provinces, and then the province coaches would listen to Andy Farrell. And obviously you're listening to a very educated, very shrewd operator, and it was like that with Joe Smith as well. And they try and bring in ideas, and it's kind of filtered down through the provinces. You don't really have that over here in Italy. Obviously, you've got Zebra, who's run by the federation, and then Benetton, who's privately owned. So it's kind of difficult that way.
What can we expect from Italy's 10 this weekend, Ian? A man you know well, young prospect, maybe to more casual observers, an unknown entity, if you like, but clearly extremely highly rated over in your neck of the woods. Yeah,
he is. Paolo, I got asked, Kieran asked me to like give him a helping hand over here, like just look after him, and he's a very smart. He's already at such a young age. He's a smart player. You can kind of see he's a little bit. He's clued in. He knows. He's very talkative. He's willing to learn. He listens, and also he's not afraid to have a go, which is probably the best thing about a young player. I think when you're a young player, you're not overcoached, and you're so confident to try things, and he's kind of bringing that to the fore in his first 2 games against played Ulster and Leinster, and he's just not afraid to have a go, which is great because he's very athletic, he's strong, and he's a good passer, but he's got it upstairs as well, which is the main thing.
Yeah, Paolo Garbisi, I didn't even name him, apologies, but when you kind of talk about his fearlessness, if you like, there, or the kind of exuberance of his being so young, where would he stack up in relation, like talent-wise, in relation to some of the other young out-halves he would have played with in Ireland or even at London Irish?
That's a tough question. I don't know. He's not really an Irish out-half. You can't compare him. I think like all the Irish out-halves at the moment are quite similar. Like, well, you just look at the two Leinster boys, and they try and like, they're looking at Johnny Sexton every day, so they try and kind of copy what Johnny does, you know. Maybe he's quite similar to Jack Carthy in the way he's like, Jack likes to have a go. He likes to attack the line. So, and Jack's not afraid to have a go. So maybe Paolo's a bit more like that. But Paolo, he's quite, when you actually see him, he's quite tall, he's quite strong, and he's quite physical. So I think that's Paolo's best asset in himself.
Yeah, and that probably suits where Italy seem to be going under Franco Smith, and over the last couple of years, the style of rugby and the focus there seems to have changed a bit. I know in Zebra they offload everything. You're probably a little bit more pragmatic and getting good results in Benetton, but it does seem like the Italian style or approach maybe is changing a little bit.
Yeah, I think if Italian rugby was to stick with the structured rugby, I don't think they'd be as good. I think the thing that separates Italy probably, and when they do well, is you don't know what they're going to do, if that makes sense. Their unstructuredness, and I know but that could be their flaw as well, because you can see Ireland, everyone knows their roles, their responsibilities, and when they're cohesive, they're very good. Like, I think, sure, Ireland were number 1 going into the last World Cup there in the world. Like, like that's because they were all quite cohesive. They all know their roles and the responsibilities. And then the difference between, and with Franco now taking over, he is trying to get them more physical and fitter and stronger. That is Franco's mentality. It's quite a South African mentality, to be fit as possible and to be as strong as possible. And we have to remember, Franco's only had a short time with them. He's only really had 3 or 4 weeks with them. So I don't know if his stamp will come across now in these next 2 matches, but I'm looking forward to see when the Six Nations kicks off again in February, when he's had a bit more time with them, that hopefully they'll be developed a bit more.
Speaking of cohesion then, Ian, it seems as though every time Conor Murray starts a game or is named to start for Ireland in this day and age, he faces a lot of flack in comment sections, forums, even in the media, sometimes from the likes of ourselves, just over his form and whether or not he remains the best option at 9. He's a guy you know obviously incredibly well, having formed your own potent partnership for many years. What's your interpretation of the scrum half situation to begin with for Ireland? If you were selecting the team, another tough question, I know, but like, would Murray be your guy still at the moment, or would you be looking at someone like Jamison Gibson Park, who's been in good form, or even Kieran Marmion, who's left out of the matchday squad, who's arguably been the form guy in Ireland over the last couple of months?
Yeah, once again, another tough question, and I don't think I'll be telling you who I'd be starting.
It was worth a try. It was worth a try.
Keep friends with everyone. Yeah.
Are you trying to put me on the spot here? Listen, Conor is a world-class player. Like he's a Lions test number 9. You know, he's a very good player, and like you do slip out of form, but I don't think Conor slipped so much out of form to be thinking about dropping him. Like it's people just because he hasn't made breaks or anything like that, or they see him putting in box kicks from thing, and what annoys me about that sometimes is like, oh, why is Conor doing that? But like you have to remember, Conor's doing what he's instructed to do. So like if that's the game plan, to like not play between, like a lot of teams don't want to play between the two 10 meters, and so the safest way possible is to put up a box kick. And South Africa during the World Cup did the exact same thing, but if you put up a box kick and you get it back, nobody notices. But if you put up a box kick and the other team feels it, it's almost like, oh, why are you kicking possession away? And that's what I feel is happening at the moment. Sometimes he's putting up box kicks, they don't get it back, and everyone kind of gets on his case. But if you go up and you catch it, then all of a sudden you're on go forward ball. You're against an unstructured D. But on the other point, on the 9s, I think it's so good to have so many class 9s in Ireland, like Marmion. Gibson Park has come through. Luke McGrath's a little bit out of form, but Luke McGrath's a very good player. And you've got Caelan Blade, who I know I'm not sure if he's injured at the moment, maybe a little bit out of form, but he's also good. And then you have Craig Casey coming through as well. And obviously we're talking about John Cooney as well, who got left out. But how good is it to have so many good number 9s? And I think we're spoiled for choice, and I wouldn't like to be picking one of those 9s.
Yeah, competition play is always a good thing, no matter what the position. And I think a lot of people, like judging by the questions, are hoping for a bit more competition at 10. Johnny Sexton, obviously, he's up for Player of the Decade, and what he's done in the game is beyond doubt. He's been brilliant for a long time. Kieran Keating was on to us saying, should Ireland use these games to develop an alternative 10? I guess in that sense, I just want to get your perspective on what it's like working with Johnny Sexton in Ireland camp, because obviously Jack Carty and Ross Byrne are there now. Harry Byrne, they seem to be pushing through. What's Johnny like to work with when you're one of the other 10s? Is it extremely competitive, or is it a good working relationship?
You kind of feel though when you go into the camp, you kind of know that Johnny's number one. Like a few times I'm in camp, I'm going into camp, and you kind of know that you're playing for the substitute spot, which can be quite disheartening. But that's all credit to Johnny and the work he's done over the years. And I think working with Joe Schmidt just brought Johnny to another level. And I think those two working together just raised the bar. And you know, when you talk to Johnny, and when Johnny talks in meetings, his rugby intellect is incredibly high. I know you didn't. It was kind of touched on this question about bringing through or using these two games to bring through players. You have to remember, if Ireland get 2 bonus points, and you have to say more than likely they'll get one against Italy, they're a game away from winning a Grand Slam. So you have to. I know there is that, trying to find that balance between bringing through young players, but Andy Farrell wants silverware, and if he can get it in his first Six Nations, and he's got a chance now to do it, he'll do it. I think he is bringing through a lot of. He's brought through a lot of young players. He's brought through a lot of uncapped players into this camp, but maybe it's not the time yet to bring through the young 10. But maybe he will. There's 2 games now to finish off the championship, and then there's other games coming up, so he'll probably do it then.
Yeah, I think we'll see the Autumn Nations Cup use
that,
definitely.
I feel like I'm lobbing you all the grenades here, Ian. But you know, with as you say, it might not be the case that a new 10 is brought through. Certainly towards the end of the Six Nations, we might see somebody emerge in the Autumn Nations Cup. But even looking to the more medium-term future, when you look at what's on offer at the provinces, you mentioned how exciting it is to have really good 9s in form, and there seems to be a conveyor belt now of 10s coming up in their early 20s. Some would say Harry Byrne is kind of the guy that Andy Farrell would have his eye on as being the heir to Sexton's throne, if you like. But then if Carberry comes back and kind of rediscover his some of his best and improve, even he might put his hand up. He's probably the guy. And even at Munster alone, some of your successors, Jack Crowley, Ben Healy, JJ Hanrahan is probably still in the mix. If you can up it a little bit, is there a name out of those like that you would have your eye on, having played the position for so long, that has impressed you most from what you've seen of them, or you would expect to go on to succeed Sexton in Green, whatever about their province?
Honestly, I probably think the next person is Rossbear, and I've played against him a good few times, and he looks so cool and calm, and he looks kind of in the shape of the mold of Johnny. Obviously, his younger brother, I think he's pretty much a carbon copy of Ross as well. So two really good players coming through there. JJ last year has been kicking unbelievable. I think he's been kind of a little bit unlucky not to team, but that's probably once again the competition of throughout Ireland with the tens. And I know they brought Billy Burns in now they brought him from Gloucester, and he's Irish qualified, and he's got injured at the moment. So, and then Madigan, he's got back. You never know, he could squeeze in there, but there's so much competition. I heard now, I've been talking to a few of the Munster lads, and they do rate the young Crowley fella, Jack Crowley. They rate him, and obviously Ben's got 2 last minute kicks, which is great for his confidence. And that's what I was kind of saying earlier about Paolo. A lot of young lads come in and they're kind of they sit back and just they let the game dictate. But if you can actually grab it when you're a young guy and I think that's when I played my best rugby, when I was a young lad. And it's like a young lad when you have no fear of like getting dropped. You played your best rugby. I played some of my best rugby in the very start of my career with like UCD and then even Connacht, because I wasn't thinking about the big picture of like playing for Ireland. I was just enjoying my rugby. And I think that's when a young guy comes on and he just enjoys his rugby, that's when he plays his best. So I'd hope that the young lads, when they just enjoy their rugby, they'll play their best. I think that would, and on the Ben Healy point, for him to get 2 great kicks, I hope he like goes on now, because it's got a bit of confidence in him.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hope that Garbisi does something similar this weekend. What do you think in prediction wise? So let's hope no Benetton players are listening, none of your teammates, but how do you think it's going to
go? I say Ireland will win, and because they are going for that championship, and they know what they have to get, and I know they're going to say they have to win the match first, but they'll be going for bonus points, because at the end of the day, a lot of those players have tasted success already, and they want more. They want to win. They don't want to come second or lose by. They don't want to lose by a point. By not going for the bonus point. So I think Ireland will win. It'll be a struggle at the start because Italy they're looking to impress their new coach. They're putting their hands up for places. Say the first 10, 15 minutes will be close, and then I think if Ireland get a try or two, and then the Italy heads might go down, which is natural. If Ireland start taking a lead, then the floodgates come open. But in fairness, I'm hoping for Italy to start well. If they start well, their maul is very good, because I know the Zebra maul is very good and the Benetton maul is very good. So if they can get their maul going, they could be a threat. But we'll see. I hope nobody's.
Ian, absolute pleasure to catch up. It was an absolute pleasure to catch up with you, Ian. It's great to see you enjoying life over there so much. Thanks a million for joining us. And I don't know what, Riva Dirty? I don't know why.
Ciao.
Yeah.
Hey guys, thanks a million for having me on, and I'll see you soon.
Glad to be there.
Cheers.
Well, we're going to chat about it a little bit more with 2 Ireland legends, starting with Munster and Ireland legend Niamh Briggs. Niamh, how are things there? I imagine you're pretty busy over the last few months.
Yeah, it's been a bit crazy and in these weird times, but good crazy, I suppose. And yeah, for us, rugby has stopped now since this week, so it's given me a little bit more time to breathe and try and think up of new plays like the ones we just watched. But yeah, no, it's been good. Not as busy as Andrew Trimble, I don't think.
We'll find out from Andrew how busy he's been in a couple of moments. But obviously, Niamh, the Irish women's team are back in action as well in the coming days. And I don't know, is this like a trivial thing to bring up, but it felt like a pretty big moment even during the week where we saw Canterbury release the women's jersey to be available for sale, replica jerseys to be available for sale. There was a little bit of a controversy a while back with the male, was it? No, they had kind of models, female models in the men's jersey. So it's nice to have the women's jersey just actually available to buy. I know, speaking to a couple of players as well, it actually meant something to them. It just feels like it's moving in the right direction, that young girls can walk into a shop or go online and buy the jersey of the team that maybe they'll be following more so than the men.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it was definitely a seismic moment for us in terms of trying to get on even par. I think more just so than the jersey been readily available for people. The crest change was a huge one for us. It's the same crest now as the men, and I think before it was just like a patch on jersey with women underneath it, and so yeah, look, it's brilliant. And when I was playing, the amount of times people would ask you for where to get the jersey and they couldn't get it anywhere. It's super. It's brilliant for Aon. It's a brilliant sponsor for us, and yeah, to be fair, I think Canterbury took a little bit of stick a few weeks ago when they launched it, but they were quick to mind their ways. And look, it was brilliant, and it was brilliant for them too, for those girls. The likes of the young girls, Baby and Parsons, started you all out modelling it and to the forefront. It just gave them a little bit of exposure that they wouldn't have been used to. So yeah, look, hopefully they can do it justice now the weekend.
Dorothy Wall, I think, is getting her first start this weekend. Have you seen? Well, like I presume you would have seen Italy play earlier in the tournament, but what are you expecting from Ireland more so in the lead up to this one? Obviously, same as the men, it's just been a long time out for them without sort of training alongside each other and so on, beyond those who play together at club level. What are you hoping to see this weekend from them?
Yeah, I think first of all, for Dorothy, I think it's an unbelievable achievement for her. I remember watching her when she was in transition year in Rockwell College and been absolutely blown away with her, even back then. And she's got into sevens for a year, and it's just a brilliant opportunity for her now to get playing. And she's what we need in terms of her physicality around the pitch. We've struggled in in those front stakes, bar the front row, I suppose, over the last few years we've been a bit light, and she brings that physicality, so it's brilliant. And yeah, I'm really excited to see her. I think for Ireland, they had a really good start in terms of, albeit a tough game against England, their home games were really good in terms of what they were trying to do. I think they looked to play a little bit more expansive than they had done previously. Their defensive shape was brilliant. Kieran Hallett has come in this year and he's brought a lot of structure to the defence probably wouldn't have had before. And they all seem to be on the same page, which makes it really difficult for, they were brilliant against Scotland and Wales in that, in the defensive pattern. Going forward, I think you just want to see them get better at the attacking sense in terms of what they're trying to do. I think at times it felt like while we try, our skill level probably wasn't up to where it needed to be. And while we knew what we wanted to do, we couldn't execute it. And I think that's going to be the big challenge for them because, as you say, they haven't played rugby really since last March, albeit, a lot of them would have one club game. I think everybody was released to play one club game. And so they're coming in like the men, not as much like the men, because they've had a few Pro 14 games and whatnot. So it's going to be whoever hits the ground running and makes the least amount of mistakes or can counter on those mistakes the most, that's going to come out win this weekend.
There is a question here from Caitlin Crow, directed to yourself, Niamh, and she was wondering, what do you think of Ireland's chances of qualifying for the 2021 Rugby World Cup? Yeah,
look, I'll be hugely confident. I think in this COVID time is what's thrown up over the next few weeks has been a bit disappointing. So there's a prelim qualifier for the lesser teams, so Spain, Russia, and the Netherlands. I think Germany or someone were in that, and that's now been cancelled or postponed as such. What's coming next, I don't know, because the qualifiers for Ireland were due to take place with Scotland and Italy and the top ranking team from that tournament in December, which obviously can't go ahead. So unless they go with the best team or the highest ranking team from now, like Spain, and play it in December, they're looking at trying to qualify after the next year's Six Nations, which makes it really difficult for them to have a build up to the World Cup if they make it. And it's going to put pressure on teams to try and produce rugby, and look, they're amateur players, so they're going to have to be together for this time. They're going to be together for the Six Nations next year, and then it's just another tournament on top of it. So it's going to be hard for all the unions to try and combat that. So if it goes ahead pre-December, I'd be delighted for them. I definitely think Ireland are more than capable of making that World Cup. I don't see why they wouldn't. It's just that they have to keep building from what they've had, say, from the Six Nations, and it's whether that they can keep that continuity going, if that makes any sense. So I think this game against Italy, the game against France next week, will be a huge building block for them going into that tournament, whenever it is.
There is a last second question here as well from the live Zoom for Niamh from Kean Highland. And he says, can you ask Niamh how many press-ups she did for the UL Bows charity drive?
I'm coaching now, so I took the video. No, I'm joking. Look, it was a brilliant initiative. The lads that come up with doing 40,000 press-ups in a week for Epilepsy Ireland, and everybody got involved. I think this year Carl Sheridan's come in as the director of the club, and he seemed to just bring the club together. It's been brilliant. And so yeah, I did a few, but not as many as I'd have liked, I don't think.
Fair play. Trimby, how many press-ups can you do these days?
Oh, very few. Very few. My arms are very long, and I'm very uncoordinated, so it's a long way to go. To be fair, I was never a strength, even when I was playing anyway.
How was the form with you otherwise? Looking forward to getting back into it, I guess, in Test Rugby.
Yes, absolutely. Even just switching on there a little bit earlier than I was expected to be, but getting to see some international rugby, getting back to Six Nations, it's very exciting. And you kind of forget it's such a strange setup with, coming in halfway through Six Nations, and I had to do a bit of research. Just I couldn't remember what stage we were at, who beat who, and it turns out it's mayhem and it's all up for grabs. So it's it's pretty exciting. Like, so even just looking back at the England France game, England. So how many months after being World Cup finalists get chinned by France? Turns out France are incredible for a few games, and then they get tripped up. And who knows what? It's just so exciting. We don't know what we're going to expect. And I think anybody who's watching this is obviously a big rugby fan, but I think this is bringing out even the closet rugby nerds. Everybody's very, very excited to get back to international rugby and getting to see Ireland play again.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get into the Ireland team and some of the selection calls, but you have a new podcast, Potholes and Penguins. How's that going?
It's strange to announce the name and not give it an explanation. So I would encourage anyone just to listen to a couple of episodes, and you might pick up on the tone. But it's good fun. Myself and Barry Murphy. Previously, we've been doing a bit of work with Joe with the House of Rugby, and we decided we wanted to go our own direction. So it's fun. It's loose. There's music. There's comedy. There's a lot of silliness, and a little bit of rugby in there as well. So
yeah. I was going to say, strictly speaking, it's kind of in our neck of the woods podcast wise as well. It's probably in competition with us a little bit. So it's lovely to, I guess, have this live action version of Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg clinking unbranded cans of beer. In what other sport could people come together like this than rugby?
I wonder if this picture would be as high profile as that Heineken picture.
I could just hear the screenshots going off on laptops across the country.
It was a great picture, but some of the like taglines with it I thought were a bit much. About rugby being, I don't know. Listen, every sport they get on well after.
Well, I don't think there's anything especially unusual about two friends sharing a beer, really. I don't think it's especially unique to rugby. Do you want to fire some of the viewers' questions to Trimby here?
Yeah.
And we bring Niamh back in as well.
So, obviously there's loads of chat about Ireland team and what Andy Farrell's gone for. He's kind of had his hand forced, I guess, in a lot of ways. And in the back three, there were a couple of injuries to Earls and Addison and Larmer, obviously. But we've had loads about Jacob Stockdale. I'm going to ask you, Trimby. Patrick O'Connell's been on. He says, is Stockdale the real deal at fullback? Is he a world-class fullback, or is this a stopgap selection? What do you reckon?
I think he certainly has the potential to be a world-class fullback, and probably needs a little bit more game time there. I know there was a little bit of a debate, and potentially they might have looked at the same personnel, but Hugo at fullback. I'm sure that would have been discussed at some stage, because he's obviously played there the last couple of games for Leinster. But Either of them could do a job. Jacob, I feel like quite defensive for Jacob, just because people are saying, he had a kind of dry patch, or he was out of form. But by being out of form, I think they meant he wasn't the best player in the Six Nations. And every time he got the ball, he wasn't scoring tries. And, he just wasn't as incredible as he was. He's still and we saw him back to, his exciting best, running from everywhere against the Ospreys. He got a lot of criticism for missing a one-on-one tackle with Cheslin Colby. I mean, who in their right mind is going to give him a hard time for missing that tackle? So, yeah, I think Jacob, to be fair, I think has matured quite a bit, but he's also kept that level of excitement, and he's a purist. He just loves getting the ball in his hands, beating defenders, and just enjoying the game and playing the game with a smile on his face. And I hope he keeps that, but just matures and just develops that kind of role at 15, because it's a really important role within the team, especially with the kicking responsibility he's got with his left foot there as well. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how it goes.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, like, I know you played centre and stuff. I don't know, did you ever play full back, but how different do you think the roles are for him switching in from 11?
Not massively different for him, because he's got such a good kicking game and such a good appreciation of the backfield. I don't think it's an enormous step up. International rugby is always going to be difficult, switching position, but I think he's probably the less risky if they were going to go for him or Hugo, just because they're maybe just saying to Hugo, listen, you're a guy who's going to be here for the long term. He looks incredibly talented, a lot of natural ability and flair, and you can see a lot of the sevens, the impact from the sevens. He looks very, very confident with ball in hand. He looks fit, incredibly fit and fast. But he might be a guy that just said, listen, just there's slightly less responsibility in the wing. Why don't you just take it easy for a couple of weeks, feel your way into this, and kind of build confidence with that. Similar to, I know Caleb Clark came out during the week there talking about how everybody was just taking any pressure or any responsibility off him. Get the ball in your hands and do what you do best. And that's so refreshing, so nice for a young fella to get that message, and then feel their way into international rugby, get a bit of confidence, and then go from there and start to mature, and then worry about the boring stuff, I suppose, after that.
Niamh, absolutely really keen to pick your brains on this as well. It's an area of expertise for yourself. At 15, when you saw the team named, what was your reaction to Stockdale getting that starting berth? Is it something you agree with, or would you have gone a little bit differently yourself?
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with Andrew for most part. I think we've been very harsh on Jacob Stockdale. I think if you go back and look at how Ireland played, they don't get the ball to the wingers' hands necessarily. A lot of their time that they get to attack is from a kick receipt or from a little bit of broken play. So I'm more excited to see him attacking from a 15 channel where he gets the ball more into his hands. His footwork is incredible, but his also ability to play make. We've kind of just gone away from that because we feel, he's a winger and that's all he can do. So from that perspective, absolutely, I'm so excited for it. Defensively, yeah, that one-on-one tackle with Cheslin Colby, as you know, it's always going to be rough, but I think he has led himself in positions before in the backfield where he's had to do too much work to get to the ball or get to the tackle, and I think that's the issue. So if he can read the situation a small bit earlier, that he's in that space before the player or the ball is, then it makes his job a whole lot easier. This is going to sound outrageous, but having watched him for a long, long time at fullback, my favourite fullback in Ireland is still Andrew Conway. And I find it mad that nobody talks about him in there. I don't understand why he doesn't play there regularly for Munster, because he's the type of player that he has so many similar attributes to Andrew Trimble. And I still feel the likes of him, Hugo, Keith Earls when he's fit, we don't give them the ball enough. And when you look at the likes of New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, they feed their wingers because they're their danger players. And I think for us, our Ireland to keep progressing and evolving, we need to change that a small bit. And so, yeah, I really hope Jacob goes well this weekend because I think he's a phenomenal player.
Andrew, what do you make of that? Conway, 15. I think Niamh is right. It's probably not spoken about all that much when you consider that a lot of his natural attributes would probably fit that position. Is it just the case of because he doesn't play their provincial level, it's not really seen as an option for Ireland?
I'd say so, yeah. I mean, we had that conversation just there, and we didn't mention him, and I didn't mention him. It was Hugo or Jacob, but it's just I suppose out of sight, out of mind. If you consider him as a wing just because he's been playing more game time, he's getting more game time there. I think just in general, it's a very, very exciting back three. I think it's one that everybody this week, I don't know, it feels like all the players have been briefed. You have to say the phrase "heads up rugby" in any interviews in the press. I don't know how many times I've heard them say it. So hopefully that means you were going to get to see a pretty exciting brand of rugby, and we're going to get to see the ball in the hands of Conway, Hugo, and Jacob, and get them a bit of space. And it'd be nice to see them setting the place alight a little bit.
Yeah, Keenan, one of the debutants, but also we've got a back row selection with Will Connors, Niamh. I mean, Doris and Sander looked pretty much nailed on, given their incredible form and what they bring to the team. Connors kind of edged that. It was hard to know which way it was going to go. O'Mahony on the bench and Van der Fleer and Conan miss out altogether. What do you make of that selection? And I know a lot of people are asking again about Peter O'Mahony's form and whether he deserves to be in there.
Yeah, look, I think Will Connors' ability to tackle is probably the best in the country. So, like, as a 7, it's what you're looking for. His work on the ground is excellent. I think he's a bit similar to Peter in that they don't offer a huge amount going forward, and I think that's probably the only, if he can evolve his game. We have to remember he's incredibly young. He reminds me a little bit of Justin Tipperick from Wales, his ability to load, to get chopped, but to get off the ground and chop. And that's going to be really important for Ireland, as maybe not this weekend, but against the likes of, Vakhtara in France and the big ball players for England, that we don't have to wrestle the ball off them. If you have someone like him that can chop and someone like Sander or Doris that can get in over the ball. So yeah, I'd love to see him with the ball in hand a little bit, just as, this is us being pernickety now and trying to, to talk things out. I think he's phenomenal, and I think he's had a brilliant start of the season, and his place in the team is very much justified. You have to feel sorry for Van der Fleer. I think he's been incredible. It's hard to know. I think maybe O'Mahony's on the bench as their go safe. He's incredible. He's the best defensive line-out disruptor that we have. He's also very good on the ground. He doesn't really offer you much of a ball in hand either. So when you take all the lesser of the evils, is it Will Connors and Peter O'Mahony, or is it Will Connors and Josh Van der Fleer? I'm not really sure either.
What's the answer, Trimby?
The two of them they're both incredible, to be fair, and there's very, very little between them, as you see, like with Leinster. Will Connors is man of the match one week, Josh comes in, he's the man of the match the next week. It's I think we could probably see something similar. We could easily see Josh play next week. I probably maybe in the balance of it might have gone the other way around. Just with the nature of playing Italy, you're likely to have more ball. And I think Josh might be slightly better with ball in hand. I mean, very, very slightly better. They're both incredible. And maybe Will might be the guy to go to Stade de France and just chop a few big French ball carriers, maybe. But there's very, very fine margins between the two of them. They're both incredible.
Can I ask you just about Peter O'Mahony as well, Andrew? Because you would have played alongside him, and I think Murray alluded to it there. Nearly every time, similar to Murray, maybe similar to Murray, Conor Murray, that he's named in an Ireland team or in an Ireland matchday squad. You people from outside of Munster, and also some people from within Munster, who kind of feel as though it's no longer warranted. Maybe that his level of consistency isn't quite what it was. We know he can still produce like really big moments and even really big matches, but they might feel more like one-offs at the moment rather than him stringing together 3 or 4 of them in succession. But having played alongside him, you would have had an insight into him that really fans wouldn't have, in that you'll see what he brings to the training pitch, what he brings to the dressing room, and so on. Can you kind of talk us through those sort of qualities? Because they seem to be valued clearly by both Joe Schmidt and now by Andy Farrell, kind of the intangibles that he brings to the table.
Yeah, I got to know Pete obviously well. Although he is a mystery, I don't think anybody really gets to know the real Pete. Interestingly, I think it's a brave coach to leave Peter O'Mahony out of a match day 23 whenever he's just got so much credit in the bank. Potentially, it could be an opportunity for him to come off the bench with half an hour to go, and he's under a little bit of pressure because there's so much competition there. But if he gets 30 minutes, it could go one way or the other for him. But he'll definitely be under pressure to have a big performance. I think it would have been a big call to leave him out straight away. If he doesn't go well coming off the bench, then it's an easier call, I think, to make that. Jack Conan's fit, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the only other option. Really, I don't think you could put Josh on the bench. You don't get enough cover from him. And then the argument for not putting Pete on the bench is maybe you don't get that kind of explosive injection of pace coming off the bench. I think Jack Conan might have been the one, and potentially if Pete doesn't go well off the bench, that could be the option for next week.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how that works out next weekend. Niamh, I want to ask you about the halfbacks, because we were talking about it with Keats earlier on. Every time Conor Murray's selected, he kind of gets there's groans from a lot of fans. What do you make of his form? And like for a 10, how good is he to play off in what he brings?
Yeah, look, I still think Conor Murray has a lot to offer in terms of his ability. He's still one of the best passers of the ball. There's no question about that. And I, like Andrew, logged on a couple of minutes early by accident and got to see some of your clips. And some of the decision making was brilliant, and his ability to be able to pick a pass flat to the line, 8-10 meters out is, it's why he's there. I think the way Ireland played the game the last couple of seasons, I'm not sure it suited him too much. We seem to slow everything down. So we slowed him down, if that makes any sense. But he's a bit like Peter. He's a lot of credit in the bank. And 2 years ago he was the best scrum half in the world, and we were all jumping him down about how he had the best scrum half in the world. You don't lose that overnight. I do think 100% he's under pressure. I think James Gibson Park's been playing really well. I think Marmion was playing brilliant. Cooney, Luke McGrath, they've all been playing really, really well. It's just now about whether he can play at a tempo that the game needs to be played at, if that makes any sense. So there was a time in that clip where, the defence are on the back foot and they've pincered in, and then you're looking to go, irrelevant of whether who's there or who's not there. Yeah. And he waited for the pod. Like, just go. Do you know what I mean? Like, if they're not there, that's on them. Like, is what I'm trying to say. And so, yeah, look, I think he has a lot of credit in the bank, and I do think he needs a big performance. I also believe that he has it in him, and I think his ability to play with Johnny Sexton is a big bonus to that as well.
Credit in the bank is coming up a lot, and I think it's the way Andy Farrell sees it. It's probably the way that Joe Schmidt used to see it. I do think it's a source of frustration for probably some people on this call listening, because at a certain point they probably wonder, when does the credit run out? And I don't know if we've seen, like, the problem with the O'Mahony thing is that he actually played really well when he came on against Scotland only earlier in this same tournament. So, like, it's not like he's out of form for Ireland. Murray, it might be slightly different. He probably had a good start to the tournament as well, really, but maybe at provincial level there are people still questioning that form.
But the way the Munster play the game and the way that Ireland probably intend to play the game are two very different things. So it's all well and good to say, listen, if you're on the pitch and you jump out of the structure or the game plan and it goes well, then you're brilliant, and probably nothing's really said to you on a Monday morning review. But if you jump out of a game plan and it doesn't go well and nobody's on the same page as you, you're the one getting roasted on a Monday morning review. So I think this time now, they've seemed to have a lot of time together, Ireland, as opposed to going into last year's Six Nations. They've now had a lot of time. They probably would have worked on a lot of things. I'm very keen to see how Ireland play and the role that Conor Murray can play in that going forward after this chunk of time together. If he doesn't take it, then that's on him, if that makes any sense. That's a personal thing for him. And the likelihood of James Gibson Park, Kieran Marmion, John Cooney are pushing and pushing and pushing, well, that can only help you for so much. But I still think they need to win the game, and that's what they're probably looking to do.
Yeah, it's an interesting point like that. Do you think then, Niamh, like that maybe Farrell looks at this as almost two blocks of fixtures, in that there is still a championship technically up for grabs? You give some of those tried and tested players the opportunity to rediscover some of their past form. I'm sick of talking about 2018 at this point, but it is when a lot of them peaked in green. And if they can't quite rediscover it, or if, say, for example, Murray doesn't take that opportunity with what Ireland are trying to do, then you do conceivably look to move on, maybe even for the Autumn Nations Cup, where experimentation will be probably more acceptable in that results are slightly less important.
Yeah, look, and Andrew said it earlier on, like, you start them, and if they don't go well, then it's easier to make the decision. And I think that, to be fair to Andy Farrell, he's been very astute in that, because it not only keeps players on their feet, but it also keeps them on his side. And like, you go in and you tear up a team straight away, you can turn people, like, you can turn players against you, or there could be a lack of trust in what you're trying to do. Or but if you get them tried and tested, it doesn't work, and you then have, just cause to turn around and say, well, we're going for somebody else.
Yeah, interesting to see what happens in that regard. Listen, we've got loads of questions about one man who's not even in the squad, so I'm going to be the one to broach it. Andrew, I'm going to put you on the spot. Simon Zebo's mentioned several of the questions coming in. Dave Moran asks, should exceptions be made for Zebo? What do you think?
Well, exceptions were made for Sexton in the past. I think the reason being Sexton was more crucial to Ireland than Simon Zebo. We just talked about how exciting this Irish back three is. I don't think an exception should be made, because potentially the damage long term, we don't know what that could look like. We don't know how many guys will decide to turn around and take a big contract. Granted, there's going to be very few big contracts anywhere, to be fair, for the next year or two. But I just think it's so important that the provinces are going well, and it's so important that guys are encouraged to stay at home. I just think it would be short-sighted to bring Zebo in with that mindset. I think we all love supporting our provinces, and we all love the European Cup. And if we didn't have teams, obviously it'd be crisis, and it'd be massively, on down the line, and who knows, we probably could survive okay, but I think we need to prioritize that.
Yeah, because Barry Kelly also asks, is the rule outdated? It's an unwritten rule, but like, from a player's point of view, like, did you ever have a chance to go away and you said, no, I can't sacrifice my Ireland opportunity? Or did you speak to teammates who were in that position where they said, I'm going to stay at home because I want to play?
I never really had an opportunity. I thought I had an opportunity at one stage, and it turned out they were just keeping me on hold in case another guy said no in the end.
Name and shame.
I can't remember. Iwani, the Australian winger that signed for Stad. I was chatting to Stad at one stage, and then they were never interested in me.
That is hard.
Actually, then the following season then was 2014, and I got a second wind, and we won the Six Nations, and it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. So, what was the question again?
in terms of keeping guys at home, like, do you think have you come across teammates who've been in a position where they said, no, I'm actually going to stay. I've got a good offer abroad, but I'm going to stay because I want to play for
Ireland? I don't know. I think it's a I suppose it's a hypothetical one, or I'm sure there's some guys like there's nothing quite like game day for Ireland. It'll obviously not be like that this weekend. Everything from staying at the Shelburne and spending time with the guys 24/7, and the bus trip, leaving the hotel, the bus trip, arriving at the state, everything about playing for Ireland is incredible. It's an amazing experience, and no amount of cash can make up for that to some guys anyway, who really value that and have experienced that and cherish those days. So yeah, I think there's guys who would definitely turn down cash elsewhere and big opportunities to play for Ireland. And I think that's a reflection of how incredible that experience is.
Yeah, Peter Romani is one who did it. I think he's turned down a few offers from France. Niamh, I'd love to get your thoughts on that as well. Like, Murray, you're probably staying on the fence a little bit more so than what you really believe, because you just think it's kind of a nonsensical issue. And I'll ask you in a second what you make of it, right? But Niamh, like, the Zebo thing, it feels like it's maybe a little bit of recency bias as well, based on one admittedly unbelievable performance by him last weekend. Like, he's been injured all year. He's 30-31. As Andrew says, Sexton was just a completely different situation in terms of how integral he was to Ireland, not only in a given year, but for more than a decade. Do you think the Zebo thing is like a goer, like where we should be looking at potentially bringing him in because he's found a bit of form over, say, a Shane Daly who's sort of succeeding him at Munster now, or some of the options who were in the matchday squad this weekend? You do, do you?
I'm a little bit with Andrew on this. I think we've got to start talking about the players that are here, and as opposed to the players that aren't. Unfortunately, they, know very well when they sign abroad what they hold. And yes, of course, Johnny Sexton, an exception to the rule was made for him, but it was an absolutely completely different kettle of fish. He was the leader of that Irish team, even though he wasn't captain at the time. And And Simon Debo was on the fringes. You know, Joe didn't really entirely trust him at the time before he left. He was in and out of the team. He had some unbelievably magical moments, which like we still celebrate now. And I watched him last weekend, and going forward, I thought he was unbelievable. And but as you say, that was, I watched him play for Munster or against Munster in Racing. I think it was January was when we went over there to watch him, and if I was going to be talking about anybody coming home to play at that time, it would have been Donnacha Ryan. So yeah, look, I think we've got to invest in the lads that are there now, the likes of Shane Daly, Jacob Stockdale, Hugo Keenan. They all offer a huge amount, and they're all here. And I think the whole Johnny Sexton experiment didn't really work anyway. I think he spent a lot of time injured. You know, not obviously to his own accord, but like, you know, we were under pressure then, like, if, you know, trying to get him back for matches, and it was falling out of the window and those camps. And yeah, I do feel like that we should just be investing in what we have now, because what we have now is just as good, I think.
Yeah, Zebo, like, I mean, listen, he did tear it up last weekend. There's no doubt about it. He was very
good.
enjoyable to watch. But yeah, absolutely. Like, nobody denying it. But I do want to ask you your thoughts on this. I feel as though you've been kind of building slowly towards going on a bit of a rant about it.
No.
But you do feel as though it's a bit of a non-issue.
I suppose we've been through the issue, particularly with Zebo before. So I'm kind of surprised when it flares up again. He definitely did play well, but I totally agree. He hasn't played for a long time. And like when Andrew's describing playing for Ireland there, that sounds incredible. And it's tough on lads being away and not being able to do that. And you think, just let them play. Obviously, South Africa have completely relaxed their rules. But the South African franchises have suffered from everyone leaving. Imagine that World Cup squad, which was predominantly like the key guys, a lot of them were based in Europe. If they were all playing for South African franchises, they'd be incredibly strong. They're still pretty strong because the player pool is much, much bigger than Ireland's. You look at the Welsh regions, who just haven't been consistently competitive. And some of their best players are based abroad. And you bring the likes of a Faletau back, and it makes a big difference. Like, think back to when the provinces weren't very good. It was when all the Irish lads headed off to England searching for professional contracts. When everyone started coming back home and they got a good system in place, that's when we started getting really competitive as well. So I just think you have to be cautious about what you're wishing for, and I suppose the knock-on unintended consequences a bit further down the line. Our pool it's strong. There's growing depth. It's great to see Leinster's Academy producing players, but it's not massive either, not compared to, say, South Africa. So listen, I definitely think on a personal level, it's really tough for someone like Simon Debo, who had a great game and has great skill set. And given the injuries, if he was at home, he'd be in that squad, obviously. But I can see why there are a few are doing what they do in that sense. And also in terms of taking care of their players. Niamh mentioned it with Johnny Sexton. That move was a disaster. And the biggest mistake they made was not sorting out his contract in the first place. And he didn't really want to go, but he went on a principle because the contract talks didn't work out that way. He found it very tough. They didn't like him in Racing. He got a lot of criticism from the French media and even from the French coaches and players. And it was a lesson as well. He picked up injuries, and it was tough for him going over and back. So they made a mistake in letting that happen, because now you can go, well, you did it for Johnny, why not do it for this guy?
The exception to the rule. There's a brilliant question here for Trimble and Niamh from Michael Kirk, who asked this in the chat. Start with yourself, Niamh, on this one. With a good few new guys coming into the Ireland teams, at what point did Niamh and Trimble feel comfortable in an Ireland shirt? I'm sure the stock answer is, oh, you're never comfortable. You want to just leave it in a better place for whoever gets it afterwards. But there probably was a point when you felt established.
Yeah, I think it probably was 2014, that kind of year after the World Cup, 2013, 14. I was a little bit different because I was so late to the game. So I didn't start playing rugby until I was 20, 21. So, and then I was capped at 22. So I was still trying to learn rugby while I was playing rugby with Ireland, if that makes any sense. So for about the first 3 or 4 years, I was still understanding what roll away meant and take your hands away from there. So yeah, I think it was probably around that 2014-15 mark that I was like, okay, yeah, look, I know what rugby's about now. So yeah, but you're never fully comfortable.
You have to say.
Did you ever get used to it, Andrew? Like, was it when you were a recognizable figure on the streets? Was that when it hit home for you? Like, was there ever a moment where you realized, wow, like, I'm an Ireland international? Or was it even maybe when you were just capped the first time?
I probably always would have struggled with confidence, to be honest. That's one of the reasons why I admire Jacob so much. We were talking about this on our podcast during the week, actually, about how
Potholes and penguins.
Potholes and penguins. Kieran Reid charges down one chip kick, and then 5 minutes later, he does exactly the same thing again. That guy is bulletproof. Like he's so confident, he's so resilient. I think that's incredible, and it's a real skill to be able to do that. I'd say I probably found it difficult to kind of express myself or chest out, kind of just feel comfortable on the pitch or feel like I was confident I was going to deliver. It took me a long time. It took me until Schmidt arrived. Actually, Schmidt got the best out of me. Easily the biggest influence on my career by a mile. He simplified things for me, and he allowed me to. You're talking about Zebo and you're talking about Jacob. I was the complete opposite. I just did what I was told. I could chase hard. I could carry hard. Look after the ball. Try and make my tackles. Just do basics unbelievably well. Be really, really consistent. And it was Joe that said to me, "That's actually all right. You can do that. That's fine. You don't have to do all the make the breaks, make the offloads." And there's me just talking about how excited I am to see this back three this weekend, do all that stuff that I couldn't do. But whenever he said to me, "It's okay just to be that type of player," I said fine, and I just got on board with it. And then all of a sudden, I just felt 10 feet tall out there, and I got a bit of confidence and got picked for the next game. And just every game, I just built up on confidence, and that was the most involved I felt. And I've been part of Ireland teams that won Triple Crowns, but I just didn't quite feel a part of it because I didn't feel comfortable in that environment. Didn't feel like I was totally expressing myself. And whenever I just simplified things, that was me. So it was 2014 for me as well. Niamh, that one people, my mates would slag me saying I really only played well for one season. But that was the season I felt most comfortable in my skin.
Before we get to listing off some of the questions and picking a winner, let's look ahead then to this game, get a few predictions for this weekend and even beyond it. Like I think Keatley even earlier on was saying he expects Ireland to win, and he was being diplomatic given his neck of the woods now. But looking ahead to, say, the championship to begin with, starting with yourself, Niamh, what would you like to see from Ireland, and what do you expect to get from Ireland over the course of the next couple of weekends?
Am I right in saying that the World Cup rankings are kind of gone out the window now?
Yeah, that's gone now. Gone.
So the result really wouldn't grate me too much if we played well and involved our ambition to play with ball in hand as opposed to box kick as much, and did an Andrew Trimble on it where we did the basics really, really well and we were really consistent in it. I would love to see us push that offload, try and get to out the back. I would love us to try and something similar to those really good clips you showed beforehand, Murray, to play at pace. I think if you looked at Australia and New Zealand last 2 weekends, the pace that they played at, the intensity that they attacked with, and they didn't just wait for one or two players to take ownership of it. Everybody just wanted to play, and I would love Ireland to get to a position where it doesn't have to be Johnny Sexton controlling everything all the time, or Conor Murray, that it could be the likes of Gary Ringrose, it could be the likes of Tadhg Byrne. He could be that link player that we've looked for, that kind of Brodie Retallick type one that you need out in those outside channels because his skill level is good enough. So I would love to see that happen. I'm not sure it will, because it's probably a results driven business, and 2 bonus point wins and they win the championship is something that they could potentially very well do. But I would and then use the Nations Cup to blood players, but it's not really blooding players that I really want to see. I want to see the game evolve. I want to see Ireland make that next level jump to their skill level is better, the intensity is better, the way they play, and they take almost like a small bit of a Leinster-esque in terms of their footwork in around contact. Because the way the breakdown is now, so difficult if you run into players, if you run into a defensive line, you only have one movement to try and get the ball back. Whereas if you look at Leinster's footwork, pre-contact, in contact, post-contact, it's so good. That's where they get all these little half shoulders, where they get these little half gain lines. And I would love to see Ireland kind of do some of that. That would be my spiel.
Trimby, what would you like to see?
Yeah, something similar. Again, Sexton was interviewed during the week there, and he gave his explanation of heads up rugby, and he said, well, it's whatever is appropriate for the defense that they're being confronted with. So again, if you decide you're going to play wide or play this elaborate style of rugby too early, whenever it's not appropriate, then the same thing's going to happen that happened at Twickenham. And there, I know again we sneaked in and saw a couple of the clips earlier on. If they force it, if they go out the back too early, every team defends with line speed now. And if you go out the back whenever it's not on, you're gonna get smashed, and there's nobody behind you, and you're going to turn over the ball. You're going to concede 3 points. You're going to get a hard time, and that's what happened Leinster against Saracens. It's what happened in Ireland playing against England the last 3 occasions. So you just have to be. I'd love to see that style as well, Niamh. I just like to see it at the right time, or maybe later on in the half whenever defenders are starting to tire. Or we all want to see kind of creative, innovative, a little bit of flair and something to excite us. But it's a collision sport, and you have to win some collisions. That's it. That doesn't really answer your question, but a little bit of both.
Interesting. What about you, big man? While I look at these questions here,
let me think a quick hit list. So yeah, improve that attacking evolution. Keep going with that. Have a really good attacking kicking game. I think is massive. I think their defense can be more aggressive and turn over ball a little bit more. They talk about that a lot, but we haven't maybe seen it consistently. They had scrum struggles earlier on in the Six Nations. I was watching the games back and had almost forgotten about it. And then you look at Leinster against Saracens. So that's an area to fix. And the line out and maul weren't perfect earlier on in the Six Nations as well. So that's quite actually a big list. I think results-wise, got to win all the home games. I think going away to France and Paris and England and Twickenham, they're tough asks. But if Farrell can win those home games, as well as getting some of the squad depth improved, then it'll be a good return. Like the Autumn Nations Cup, I think is a bit of a free shot in that sense. Of course, he's going to be under pressure if he's losing home games, but there's a chance to experiment. As Niamh mentioned, the rankings don't matter anymore. So I'd love to see that. Win your home games and develop the squad a little bit more.
We've got a Bujo at home burger kit and a jersey of a viewer's choosing from Lovell Rugby to give away for the best question. Just to bear in mind, I'm going to make bags of this. This is going to be worse than my Italian because there are so many questions to go through, and some of the questions we didn't even get around to. I might wind up reading those, but there was Patrick O'Connell who was asking Andrew Trimble, is Stockdale the real deal at fullback, a world-class fullback? He was asking, Caitlin Crowe was asking Niamh Briggs, what do you think of Ireland's chances of qualifying for the Rugby World Cup in 2021? James Hanna had the question about signs of change in a playing style since Andy Farrell has taken over. And Conor Brogan was wondering, will Farrell and Cat look to play a more expansive brand? There were some questions for Ian Keatley, which I feel as though are now disqualified. Did not think them through. So apologies to Justin, Cronin, Michael O'Brien, Jamie McNamara, Niall O'Sullivan. They were all good questions. Fergal O'Shea. Lots of Zebo questions as well. David Moore and Barry Kelly, Ian O'Reilly, they're roughly the same question. And then there were a few on the live chat. There was I knew I was going to make a bags of it. Keane Hyland, I think, is gone for the press ups question. In fairness, I don't think he was expecting to win the prize, but that was cheap. There was Michael Kirk asking about when the two guys became comfortable in the green jersey. I'm going to leave it at that. If I'm leaving out questions, I really apologize to anybody who asked one. Niamh, we'll task you with picking the winner from those. I don't know, can you remember any of them?
I'd say Andrew would probably have a better idea because he's probably used to the podcast stuff. But Andrew, what question was your favorite one?
The press ups question. I think the press ups question.
To be fair, the quirkiest one.
No, it's probably the one about Ireland being the most comfortable. I think that one.
Yeah, I think I really like that one actually. That was Michael Kirk. So we will sort you out, Michael Kirk, with a Guinness, Bujo, at home burger kit, and a jersey of your choosing from Lovell Rugby. I think we will have your email address from being on the Zoom call. We'll sort it out anyway. Nonetheless, give Murray or I a tweet afterwards if we're not on to you, but we will, I promise. Niamh Briggs, thanks a million for joining us. Really appreciate it. It was really enjoyable to hear all of your thoughts on both the women's and the men's team ahead of this weekend. And Andrew Trimble, pleasure as always. Thanks a million. Best of luck with Potholes and Penguins. A reminder to people to subscribe. Patreon,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Become a patron and help and give the lads your support. Murray, thank you as always.
Cheers, Gav. Enjoyed it.
And thanks as well to Guinness, sponsors of this Zoom call and sponsors of this Six Nations virtual preview event. Listen, to everybody at home who tuned in, everybody who sent questions, a few of which we obviously didn't get around to, thank you and apologies. But enjoy the rugby over the weekend, enjoy the rugby over the next few weeks. We'll get through it. It'll all be okay in the end. Until next time, mind yourselves and take it easy.